Back when I was a high school teacher and I was teaching a class on a play or a poem or a novel, I would always have students cynically ask me the question, did the author really mean for a word or a sentence or a passage to be read the way that we're reading it, to be interpreted how we are interpreting it? This question in recent years has become a meme, and that meme is always some variation of the phrase, "the curtains are just blue." The idea behind this meme is that we overanalyze texts, especially when we're in high school. That maybe a thing is just a thing in a book. If a character walks into a room and the curtains in that room are blue, maybe they're just blue. Maybe they don't represent how the character feels. Maybe they're not tied to the themes of the novel. Maybe they're just blue. And I hate this. And I think this question, this meme, this joke, is emblematic of a much wider issue. And that is the failure of the school system, especially in English class, to properly explain to kids why they do this, why literary analysis is in fact important. And the answer is simple. It's not about the book. It's not about the author's intent. It's about you, the reader. And people don't seem to understand this. Students don't seem to understand this because they've never been taught it. And I hate that. The system has failed them. I never blamed my students for not understanding why. I got irritated if they made a joke about it because that meant that the joke had been normalized and it was expected to laugh at these blue curtains, to laugh at literary analysis. It was now a joke. And that meant that the school system had failed so badly that it had become a joke. Maybe the curtains are just blue. That doesn't matter. We often don't know what an author intended because maybe they're dead or we can't reach out to them and ask. But it doesn't matter. That's not the point of all of this. And that's what I want to talk about here. What is the point of the curtains being blue? Why does it in fact matter that we look at these curtains and question why they're blue? What's the point of it all? The reason I think this is a dangerous meme, a dangerous joke, is because it makes fun of critical thinking skills and analysis. It is not explained well enough to kids, and therefore not to adults either, why we do this. So let me explain it first. When we look at a text, and we ask the question, why are the curtains blue? We are putting the onus on the student to figure it out through imagination, analysis, and critical thinking skills. It's not about the author, it's about them. What can you glean from the text? This skill that we're teaching has enormous ramifications, especially later in life as you go into adulthood. The easiest and perhaps the most important example is news media. If you make a joke as a kid about the curtains just being blue, you are far more likely to fall prey to predatory and propagandist journalism. If you don't develop critical thinking skills as a kid, as a teenager, and as a young adult, you're going to take the words of the Daily Mail or Fox News at face value, because these journalists employ skills that encourage a certain reaction from the reader. This is obvious. It happens all of the time, and yet it's not obvious to so many people. When I was a kid, I really valued imagination and critical thinking, etc., and my dad would buy and read the Daily Mail every day. I would look at the headline, I would break it down, and I would see what they were doing, the way that they were scaremongering, the way that they were encouraging an emotional, aggressive, primal response from the reader. And I would tell my dad that, and he wouldn't get it, because he wasn't taught these skills. And now I'm starting to wonder, but this sounds like a conspiracy theory, whether or not these skills are diminished in order to make sure that people do fall for certain propagandas. Could I really put it past Rupert Murdoch to encourage governments, to encourage schools, not to properly teach critical thinking skills so that his newspapers frighten people and do what they are intended to do, which is spread hate and distrust and bigotry? I wonder. So when we teach these skills to kids, what we're doing is asking them to use their imagination and their critical thinking skills to build up an idea. Let's take an example. I'm going to read out the first 2 or 3 paragraphs of 1984 and we'll see what we can do. Chapter 1. It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Winston Smith, his chin nuzzled into his breast in an effort to escape the vile wind, slipped quickly through the glass doors of Victory Mansions, though not quickly enough to prevent a swirl of gritty dust from entering along with him. There's lots of adjectives there. We've got some proper nouns, we've got Winston's name, and we've got the name of the building he's walking into. What can we glean from this first paragraph? We know that the day is cold, so that sets the scene. What does the word cold conjure? Things like desolation, discomfort, a lack of life, bare branches, hard earth. Times are difficult, maybe. There's no warmth in this world. It's cold, and therefore maybe dead. There's an adverb where it says that he slipped quickly. Maybe he's running late, maybe he's nervous, maybe he's scared. And he walks into a building called Victory Mansions. Now, we have no idea what this place is yet, but the two words in the name each conjure grandiosity. Victory is a good thing that you're supposed to feel proud of. A mansion is impressive. It conjures the idea of wealth and success. But then it says that entering with him was some gritty dust. Not that he dragged it in, not that it was an accident, but that it came with him, alongside him, implying that he too is grit and dust. He's walking into a place called Victory Mansions, but he's coming out of the cold, and he's bringing in dirt, immediately creating the idea of some sort of divide between where he's been and where he's going, who he is and what he's doing, etc. That was just the first paragraph of 1984, and I did a lot of very, very simple high school level analysis there. But what skills have I just learned? What have I just employed? I deconstructed a paragraph, looked at the individual words and the meaning of those words and what they evoke in the mind of the reader. These are skills that we need in life all of the time, and if we apply this to the thing I mentioned before when it comes to newspapers, getting good at this means getting good at seeing through things like propaganda. You read a headline or the first few paragraphs of an article in the Daily Mail, you listen to the words spoken by politicians, you listen to the ways in which news anchors on Fox News speak, and suddenly, because you've developed these skills, you're able to see through it and analyze what they're saying and think about why they're saying it. We look at the words on a page, and then we move backwards through their life. We look at the larger picture, and that is so important. Hang on, let me go back. First point, the words on the page or the words being spoken. If you're able to go down to the micro level and analyze specific words, you're able to take a step back and consider why they're being used, as I just did with 1984, and as you could do with the words in the speech of a politician. Why are certain words being used to elicit certain responses? What emotions are they trying to draw out of the reader or the listener, and why? When a politician makes a statement, that statement has been very, very carefully constructed, not just by them, but by a team of experts who have a specific goal in mind for how the audience should react. And the same goes for tabloid journalism and all journalism. What reaction do you want from the reader? If you take on board the idea that the curtains are just blue, you're taking that idea into life when it comes to journalism and politics, and you'll just take everything at face value, because that's the argument you're making. The curtains are just blue. Face value. An article from the Daily Mail is just an article. They're just facts. It's just information. They're just reporting what's out there. Don't look too much into it. There's nothing to analyze. You learned that in high school. The curtains are just blue. This headline is just a headline. These words are just words. There's nothing to read into it. It's poisonous, it's toxic, it's lazy, and it is detrimental to the way that we live. It's detrimental to our freedoms, and I am not being hyperbolic when I say that. If you're not critical, you're screwed. If you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. It's that kind of a philosophy. And then, as I said before, as I was getting ahead of myself, there's the larger picture. When you analyze the words in a text, by going deeper into the words on the page, you are simultaneously able to jump back and look at the larger whole. For example, as we analyze the words that are used to describe Winston in 1984, those words will encourage us to think about his life. If the clothes that he wears are described, we can start to think about things like his taste in fashion, his financial situation, his job, his age, the era in which the book is set. And suddenly we're painting a much larger picture of this character. And you can apply that again to journalism. If you read a headline from the Daily Mail talking about how homeless people are to blame for everything, you can take a step back and go, okay, homeless people, well, why are they homeless? What has caused that? That will lead you to do more research. You have learned to look at the clothing on a character in a piece of fiction and how that led you to think about their financial situation. So now, when you look at a headline about homeless people, you'll start thinking about financial situations and why people are homeless, and you'll look around you and go, hang on, rising rent, rising housing costs, stagnation of wages. And suddenly you might realize that people are not homeless by choice, as a tabloid might want you to think, as certain politicians might want you to think. Suddenly you can be critical of tabloid news, of the statements made in the press by politicians, and it all started by analysing why the curtains are blue. When we ask the question, why are the curtains blue, we're asking why. And to get the answer to any why question requires imagination and analysis, as well as research. If you're wondering why a tabloid newspaper is suddenly scapegoating homeless people, you can use these skills. You can go and do some research. You can look at the wider picture, and you can also zoom in and look at the words in the article to find out what their agenda is. Analysing a piece of fiction, a play, a poem, whatever it may be, is all about developing your skills. It doesn't matter what the author intends. It doesn't matter what book it is. You can do it with anything. The fact that you can analyse pretty much any piece of fiction in that way means that it's not about the piece of fiction in question. It's about you. And yeah, you can kind of make it up. I used to say that to my students. If you feel like you're reading something that's dry and not speaking to you on a thematic or emotional level, pick a random word, pick an adjective, pick an adverb, analyze it, start thinking about what that word represents, think about synonyms, think about what it evokes, and think about how that might tie into the themes or the characters in the story. And who knows what you might discover by doing that. You're not actually making it up, you're using your imagination. And that's the point of the whole thing. Critical analysis is a beautiful thing. Our imaginations are incredible, beautiful things. Use them. These skills are important. The curtains are never just blue. Never take anything at face value. Analyze it. Think about it. Use your brain. When someone makes a joke about how the curtains are just blue, they are betraying their own lack of imagination and their own lack of critical thinking skills, and the fact that they're probably going to fall for anything that gets thrown at them. Don't be like that, and subscribe for books.